I'm not going to bore you with everything about us. I will just direct you to Entrepreneur Magazine. Entrepreneur Magazine did a feature story on us. It was the June issue last year. Of course, it's dated May 30th here. As you can see, I'm the midget of the group. Jason's our tall one, and Zach is the third one. We are entrepreneurs. We literally all started businesses. Jason and I started 8,500 companies. We understand how you take an idea and grow it into a business, how you can't do it unless you have access to capital. But when you do, you've got a great idea, you can actually hire a lot of people to create business in the world. We could not do that with the collapse of the financial markets and understood the problems with the regulations and how they did not scale down to start some small businesses, and how if we couldn't get capital to these people like us to create these jobs, we would not create, we wouldn't get out of this recession that we're in the United States. And so we went to Washington, D.C., we lobbied, Washington, self-lobbied. We drafted the framework, it's called the Startup Exemptions in this story. We got bipartisan support by staying on policy and out of politics in Washington, D.C. We lobbied for jobs. This passed the House of Representatives 40717. We had the backing of the White House. It passed the Senate, which is part of the Jobs Act, 7326. We started Crowdfund Capital Advisors, and we now work with governments globally, helping them understand how crowdfunding can create jobs in the regions. It's been a real honor to work with governments in the Middle East. It's been a true honor to work with the World Bank on drafting this report right here on crowdfunding potential for the developing world. As entrepreneurs, we realized that we had a role to help people that were not entrepreneurs or didn't understand the severity of taking up people's money and starting businesses. So we were contacted by Wiley, which we thought was great, to write the Dummies Guide for crowdfunding. So this is not donation-based crowdfunding. This is the Dummies Guide. We joke around as crowdfunding investing by dummies. That's about how you raise money for a business, how you use that money to grow a business, how you need to be responsible with investors, and follow regulations. So that's what this book is about. It's not your donation and perks-based crowdfunding. By the way, I'm not actually going to go into what crowdfunding is and all that stuff. I'm assuming everybody here already knows what's it all about. My goal is to share a very lofty vision that we have with you about how we can make a change in the world with crowdfunding. Okay? So, the way to deal with the world today is to address problems faced on. This is what we did when we showed up in Washington, D.C. We didn't talk about, hey, I can't get money to start my business. I can't get money because I want to, be creative with an idea. We showed up and said, don't you get it? Don't you understand that if we can't get money to the people that create the jobs, we're not going to get out of this economic recession that we're in. We went there and we faced the problem head on. We've got an unemployment problem. We've got a big problem that we need to address. And it worked. And we're going to see the implications of crowdfund investing as Title III, it's called, here in the United States goes into effect this year. But I was speaking at an event in Turkey, and I was talking about how great this was for the United States right after the bill had passed. And I was talking about all the jobs that we're going to create, how exciting this will be for our economy. And a student in the back of the room got up, and he said, jobs aren't just an American thing. They're a global thing. And I thought he hit the nail on the head. We've got a huge problem facing us globally, and it's unemployment. And we've seen what this unemployment, particularly with the youth, has done globally. In the Middle East, we're watching the news. We've got civil unrest. We've got the Arab Spring that's sweeping the Middle East. These are unemployed people that want to be a productive member of society, but they don't have the ability, and their governments have not been helping them. And so they're revolting against their government, saying, listen to us. And the governments need to start listening, or there are bigger problems. But we had the same problems here in the United States. Occupy Wall Street was a perfect example of that. We have economic inequality that pervades global societies. And unless we can look at ways of not distributing wealth per se, but allowing people to have access to capital to create opportunities for themselves, then we won't address that problem. Now, the third thing that we have to look out for, which is the next revolution that's coming. And mark my words, this revolution is on the cusp right now, is the gender revolution. Women are underserved globally. As we travel around the world right now, and we have been to 26 countries in the last 18 months, there's one thing that I see over and over again, is women are excluded from a majority of the opportunities out there, and it just doesn't make sense. They have brilliant ideas. They have the ability to be just as accountable as entrepreneurs as men do. They're actually, in many cases, more caring as entrepreneurs and leaders. So we should give them the same opportunity. They aren't sitting idly anymore, saying, it's fine for me to sit back and do nothing. They're actually stepping up, and they're getting mad. And I'm seeing this in places like the Middle East, where we've had the Arab uprising, and unemployment has been a charge for we need to do something. The next revolution is coming, and it's with women in the Middle East. I have a friend who lives in Medina. The great thing about this is we get paid to fly around the world right now, and I meet amazing people. And I make great friends all over the world. So I befriended this guy in Saudi Arabia. And we were chatting on Skype the other day. He's like, listen, I have to go. I have to take my sister to the grocery store. And I wasn't thinking. And I was just like, well, why doesn't she just take herself? And he's like, women can't drive. They're not allowed to do anything. And I was like, oh, that's right. I'm totally sorry. Learn to be very culturally sensitive as you go down this path. And he's like, oh no, she's pissed off. She's pissed off. Her friends are pissed off. Everyone's pissed off. And they think it's time for the rules to change. And I said, really? Well, can they possibly do anything about it? And he goes, something will happen shortly. And this something is the next revolution that I think we will see globally. So it's been fascinating to be a part of it. But I'll tell you, there's a solution to this. And I believe it's in crowdfunding. Essentially, when you look at what people want, when you look at these uprisings, when you look at Occupy Wall Street, when you look at gender inequality, it's very simple. It's not rocket science here. People want a job. They want to be a productive member of society. They want safety and security, knowing that they can pay for health insurance if they need to. They want the right to education so that they can learn and have an opportunity to make more money. That seems pretty logical to us here in the United States because we have access to all this. In many parts of the world, they don't have access to this. But I really, truly believe that crowdfunding can represent a solution to this. That crowdfunding can be a quiver in the cap that allows us to create these jobs so that it addresses many of these problems that we have right here. But it's more than crowdfunding platforms. The big idea is creating a crowdfunding ecosystem. And by that I mean in the United States, we've got Title III. In the UK, they've got crowdfunding. In Australia, they've got crowdfunding. In all these countries that we're talking with policymakers about creating enabling policy to create local crowdfunding ecosystems. The problem with that is it just works in the country, but we haven't dealt with the ability to fund entrepreneurs globally. That is the biggest challenge. What if we could create a global crowdfunding ecosystem that connects entrepreneurs and investors, that leverages technology to tackle issues that we've had, endemic issues that have been around for decades, but now because of technology, I truly believe we can address them, and we're seeing them addressed today. Like, how do you deal with monetary flows when you've got anti-terrorist laws in place and anti-money laundering laws in place? How do you deal with accountability when you're sending money to an entrepreneur in another country and you want to make sure that they're going to do what they say they're going to do with that money? How do you prevent people from taking off of that money, committing fraud? Technology, I believe, is the answer. And it's not just the platforms, it's an entire ecosystem that supports crowdfunding. We believe that we can create about 11.4 million jobs, and 11.4 million businesses, and 25 million jobs over the next 10 years if we can do this right. But it's going to require that we work together on a global scale, and that we pull in institutions like development banks to help us make this happen. So this was the World Bank report. That was the premise for which the World Bank came to us and said, help us understand what the potential of crowdfunding is for the developing world. Help us create a story for why countries and governments that have lacked access to capital can now actually leapfrog, much in the same way that China used mobile technology to leapfrog, so that they can create enabling entrepreneurial ecosystems to create jobs. And that's what the basis of this report is about. In it, we talk about how within 25 years, the crowdfunding market in the developing world will be a $96 billion market. So crowdfunding in the report, it falls in the capital stack. Okay? It's between friends and family and angel investors. It expands the circle of friends that you have meeting investors through the social network. We refer to this as Web 3.0. So, Web 1.0 was the internet, 2.0 was the social network. Now we've got to figure out, how do we turn those friends, followers, and likes into money? How do we turn it into dollars or, whatever currency it is globally? And that's what Web 3.0 is. It's turning the social network on to its financial capacity by engaging people as investors in their ideas. And it fits below angel investors and above friends and family, because it's your social network. But it plays a very important part for angel investors and venture capital, because it provides a signal for them to let them know that companies that have been successful with crowdfunding are great opportunities, or can be great opportunities, for follow-on deal flow. And that if it didn't meet your sweet spot for an original investment, an initial investment, that now they can go to these entrepreneurs and say, listen, I like what you're doing, I think it has merit. Everybody understands it, everybody knows that the thing about being an entrepreneur is about team, and it's about execution. It's about taking your idea and delivering upon what you're going to say with that idea. And investors want to know that you're going to be able to execute on your vision, particularly VCs and angels. So this allows them to now say to people, why don't you go out to one of these platforms and crowdfund your idea? Why don't you see if you can raise some money from them? Because not only are you going to get money from them, but you're going to signal whether there's a market opportunity for this business or idea. That's the beauty about crowdfunding. It lets you engage a community of people, it lets you test the market, there's product validation for it, and then actually after you get your funding, you get this feedback from this community of engaged people now. So that all makes sense. And that's what we've been talking about in this report. About 4 months ago, things started to change. And our phone started to ring. And it wasn't from entrepreneurs, it was not from governments, so they were getting a lot of calls from governments. It was from fortune companies. And fortune companies started to call us and say, how can we use crowdfunding and crowdfund investing for ourselves? How can we get onto this movement to actually make a difference for ourselves? So I think you're going to see in the future, and this is an entire different conversation, but how Fortune 500, actually Fortune 1000 companies are going to be leveraging crowdfunding for deal flow, because they realize that the true opportunities for them do not necessarily exist within their slow infrastructure, within their inability to be innovative as big corporations, but externally through the ideas that exist not within the United States or around the vicinity of where their offices are located, but globally, where people can be working on solutions to their problems that they face. And you will see crowdfunding platforms with campaign pages up there that start tagging themselves with Scott's Miracle-Gro, with Palmolive, with Apple, with the company name for the solution that they think they've got an opportunity for. And they are going to, so that way you're going to start seeing people that are working on solutions for Apple that Apple didn't even know that they needed a solution for. And this is the future where crowdfunding is going to go. And it's going to be global solutions that are delivered to them. So crowdfunding does not operate without what we call circle of trust. And a circle of trust requires that you've got variables in place in order for these ecosystems to emerge. And these variables are economic, cultural, social, and technology. So let's talk about them one by one so you understand what it is that I'm talking about. In the entrepreneurial culture, you have to have a system of letting people know that it's okay to fail. You have to have conversations with them about how you start businesses. You have to have create an environment for them so they can come in and feel safe about becoming involved in a business. So where do you do that? Well, you can do that in co-working spaces. You can do it in incubators. You can do it in accelerators. The beauty about these places, and we encourage it, and it's going to be necessary for crowdfunding to emerge, is to have the oversight that will be necessary for these entrepreneurs. Once they get funded, once they need to be accountable for that money, and once they need to report what they're doing to their investors. These incubators and accelerators also serve as the social network because they allow us to pull people together in these communities and hold startup weekend events. Any type of event that pulls people together, hackathons, any social startup accelerator type event, well, lets people share ideas and problems that exist in their communities. And by the way, one of the things I say over and over and over again is, while I think technology solutions are great, and technology is the answer to a lot of the problems that we have, we all eat. We all need, certain basic things like a haircut. And those are solutions that we need globally as well. And the opportunity for people to create businesses to solve these problems globally is an opportunity for crowdfunding itself. So these community engagement things do not have to be focused around technology. They can be non-technology related events too. Now, the other important thing is you need to have technology in place. The world that crowdfunding revolves, and you've got a social network. That social network is going to be on the internet or on a virtual phone. All of this is technology that needs to be in place. So we need to encourage governments, we need to encourage people to engage in technology, to purchase technology, and that's a pretty daunting task as well. And the final and the biggest thing is we need to have regulation. We need to have policy in place that enables entrepreneurship. We need to have governments that realize that these are the people that create the jobs and actually can do good for them, rather than create hurdles for them to get into or out of business that deters them from creating these jobs. And that's a lot of the work that we do with strategy work with governments today, is helping them create the right policy for their governments. Collectively, when you've got all of these variables together, you can create a circle of trust. And that trust allows